We have been looking at the Gospel of John these last, now this is the 8th week, and looking at different things. And so we finally we've come to our conclusion on John and really what John is getting at and the whole purpose of the writing of this book. And we are going to look at John's picture of the community of believers. And so we have a very short reading. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Now, there is some difficulty with this passage. And I'll tell you, the difficulty is in one word, and the difficulty is the word believe. Now, the word itself, believe, isn't a difficulty, but the form of the word that John chose to use when he wrote this in the original Greek is confusing, because it can mean, as the New Living Translation renders it, these have been written so that you may continue to believe, or it can grammatically mean, as the New Revised Standard Version puts it, these have been written so that you can come to believe. And the question then arises, is John writing to believers that they may continue to believe, that he's building up these people in their faith, or is he writing an evangelistic letter to unbelievers that they may come to believe? This is from the New International Version. I like how they deal with it. They say, we don't know which one it is, so we're just going to say, so that you believe. I think it's quite likely John's audience is both, believers and unbelievers. What is clear is what John is doing, though, is he is writing from within a community to a community. And I almost hate to use that word because it's so overused these days. But there's a reason it has become overused, and that's because it's a powerful word and has a lot of meaning. And if we look at what we've seen so far in John, we looked at the first Sunday looking at John, we looked at the people in John and those people as individuals, but also that each person in John represents a group. And how like, whether it's Nicodemus or the woman at the well or any of those others, they not only are actual people, but they represent how these groups interact with Jesus. Then we looked at the actions, particularly the actions of Jesus, and how they are real, concrete, specific actions, but they also point us to a greater truth. And we looked at two of the themes that run throughout the Gospel of John, and that's this idea of light, Jesus the light of the world, and the darkness that cannot overcome the light, and water, and how water is used so often to draw us in and see something more in John. And then finally, last week we looked at the crucifixion and how the crucifixion is at once both the reality that establishes our relationship with God, but also becomes a symbol to point us to that greater reality. And so now we come to our conclusion, what John is getting at, what it's all about, what is chronologically after the cross, and that is community. That it is through the resurrection, through Jesus' death and resurrection, that a community comes into existence. Before the resurrection and Jesus' ascension back to heaven, it would be safe to say, really, this isn't so much a community as it's a group of friends that are centered on one person, and that's Jesus. And we've probably all experienced groups of friends in which if one friend was taken out of that group, the whole group just kind of goes their own way. That's really what it was. Jesus was at the center of this group of friends, but he was the one that brought them all together. He was the one that the reason that they were friends. And so if he's pulled out, then they would all scatter. But because we see what happened in the resurrection, that's not what happened. he gathered them together, and they became a new kind of community with a new purpose. And really what John is getting at in this gospel is the purpose of the existence of that community. He said, so that you can have faith, so you can believe. And I want to look at 3 specific people today and their interaction with this community and their interaction with Jesus from 3 very different perspectives with, well, at least 2 different outcomes. The first one I want to look at is Nicodemus. Nicodemus is on the outside looking in. Nicodemus is mentioned in the Gospel of John 3 times. And of those 3 times, the most famous, of course, is in John chapter 3, when Nicodemus comes to Jesus at night, which is very significant, both because people tended not to go out a lot at night in those days because it was dangerous, but also because the symbolism of light and darkness. He's in the darkness, he goes to see the light that is Jesus. And they have this great conversation in which at least every football fan is familiar with the reference of John 3:16, because we always see it up in the stands somewhere behind the goalposts. And Nicodemus comes to Jesus, and Nicodemus is not part of this community. He's on the outside looking in. Nicodemus has his own community. He's in the community of the Sanhedrin, the ruling council of Jerusalem. Now, the closest thing we have to the Sanhedrin would be, this is not paint Nicodemus in a good picture, Congress. Now, think if the community that you were part of, that you hung out with, was a bunch of people who had huge egos and thought everybody else was an idiot. What would you be like? I mean, how would your daily life be? And how would that shape who you are, how you do things? So Nicodemus is part of this community, very cantankerous, very pompous. They are the top they're the top of the food chain, socially, economically. They're powerful people. They're well-educated people. They're well-connected people. And that's what Nicodemus, that's the community he's part of. And he sees something in Jesus. People flock to Nicodemus and his crowd because they're rich and they're powerful. But then he sees Jesus, and he sees people flock to Jesus not because he's rich or powerful, because he's not. He's poor. He has no earthly authority. He's from nowhere. He's not from one of the centers of power. He's from the hinterland. He's a hick. And yet people flock to him simply because they want to be around him. Sometimes for selfish reasons. They want to see a miracle. He's a curiosity. But a lot of people want to be around Jesus because they like to be around Jesus. Wouldn't it be, just imagine how it would be if people who weren't Christians said, I really like to hang around with Christians. That's not the case. The biggest obstacle to the church growing usually is us. But people want to hang around with Jesus. They like him. He's interesting. He's fun. And Nicodemus sees this. And so he goes to see Jesus. And he has this conversation. Very interesting conversation. At the end of the conversation, there is no conclusion. Nicodemus just leaves. And he pops up again in chapter 7, right after Jesus heals the man born blind. And people are very upset with Jesus for doing this because he did it on a Sabbath, and you could have waited until the next day to do it when it wasn't the Sabbath. And there's no prohibition against working. And so people are really mad, and this is what happens. Then Nicodemus, the leader who had met with Jesus earlier, spoke up. Is it legal to convict a man before he is given a hearing? He asked. They replied, Are you from Galilee too? Search the scriptures and see for yourself. No prophet ever comes from Galilee. So Nicodemus is still standing in that community, but looking over to Jesus and the community surrounding Jesus with a sympathetic eye. thinking they've got something going there. And we shouldn't just condemn them out of hand because they're different than us and he's doing things different than us. And this is how he gets treated. Again, it ends with no rebuttal from Nicodemus. He just shuts his mouth. But then Nicodemus shows up again in John chapter 19. And apparently Nicodemus has become friends with a man named Joseph of Arimathea. And this is what it says. When Pilate gave permission, that is to take Jesus' body down, Joseph came and took the body away. With him came Nicodemus, the man who had come to Jesus at night. They wrapped Jesus' body with spices and long sheets of linen cloth. Since the tomb was close at hand, they laid Jesus there. This is apparently, because Nicodemus is never mentioned again, but this would apparently be Nicodemus' break with the old community and coming into the new community. And we see so often people who are outside the church looking in. And I've found they have three different attitudes towards the church. The first one is hostility. They're hostile towards the church. They are angry at Christians. They say, "You stupid Christians," with a scowl on their face. And I found they're angry at Christians for one of two reasons. One, they're angry at Christians because their interaction with Christians in the past has led them to be angry because the Christians they've interacted with have not been models of love your enemy. Or it's self-defense because they're worried they might come to believe. In the case of those people, all we can do is model what Jesus told us, to love our enemies. Because if someone's angry at Christians because of Christians, they're not going to listen to reason or logic or anything else. They're mad. We've all been, well, truth be told, we've all been on both sides of an argument where one person's really mad and you don't think logically. That's where they're at. And people, the second one, those people who are angry at Christians. There's others who are kind of bemused by Christians. Any of you ever read the old novel, The Virginian? I highly recommend it. It's one of the great American novels. And there's a scene where the Virginian is playing cards. It's a Western. It was the original Western book. And there's a scene the Western is playing, the Virginian's playing cards with these other guys. And one of the guys calls him a cheater. And the Virginian says, "You better smile when you say that to me." You know? And that's these Christians. They're like, you stupid Christians. And they say it with a smile on their face. They're bemused by us. They find Christians mildly entertaining because of our strange beliefs. Now, people like that are open to conversations. And I actually had a conversation yesterday. It's a drill weekend for me, so I was at National Guard drill. I'm talking to one of my soldiers, and I have to do what's called a religious climate survey. I do it, it's ongoing all the time. So I can know where all my soldiers are, so I can know they're receiving the care that they need from me or from someone else if they're of another religion. And I asked one of my soldiers, how do you define yourself? That's what I always ask them. How do you define yourself religiously? And this soldier kind of hemmed and hawed and hemmed. I'm like, come on, just tell me. I just need to know. Because if there's something, help I can provide or help I can't provide, I just need to know that. And so finally this soldier, she's hemming on and finally said, "Well, I'm an atheist." I said, "That's how you define yourself?" She said, "Yeah, but the last time I said that to a priest, they got mad at me and yelled at me and all this stuff." And I'm like, I'm not going to yell at you. Because number one, as an Army chaplain, that's not my job. But I need to know where you're at in case something happens in your life, what kind of support you're looking for. And I said, also, I'm here by court order of a federal court to ensure the First Amendment right of free exercise of religion of all soldiers, not just those who I happen to agree with. And I said, and also, Why should I expect you to listen to me if I won't listen to you? And that is so important with those Christians who are on the outside looking in, that if we don't listen to them, we should have no expectations they'll ever listen to us. Because we don't know where they're coming from. And the third group are those who are outside looking in and find themselves like Nicodemus, looking in and saying, there's something going on in that community, in that church, and I don't know what it is. But the people there, they've got something I don't have. And I think maybe I would like to have it. Those are the people it's really important to listen to, because they're going to come forward with some really huge stuff and huge questions that they honestly want answers to. So that's where Nicodemus is at, and that's what we can learn in our kind of our practical everyday lives as Christians. The next person I want to look at is Judas. Judas was in the community and then he left. You know, the grass is always greener. Now the Bible tells us that Satan played a pivotal role in what Judas did. But Judas wasn't a puppet. The devil wasn't, playing him around or programming as a robot. He was a human being. And we're not told what thoughts were going on, what Judas's thinking was. We got a lot of ideas. There's no shortage of ideas of why Judas did this from a human perspective. But somewhere along the line, Judas became disillusioned with Jesus. He did not join the 12, and Jesus did not invite him in to be one of the 12 because he was not a believer. He was, and then he lost it and became disillusioned. And there's a real good lesson there for us as Christians, just to really be on the lookout for each other. To be on the lookout for each other, to be watching out for each other, so that we don't have people who were on the inside and go on the outside. Because what did Judas find on the outside? Despair. He didn't find any answers. He just found despair. And so that's a lesson for us there, to be on the lookout. Just be on the lookout for each other. And the third one is Peter. I guess blame it on temporary insanity. I know a guy whose wife left him after 20-some years of marriage. She kind of went nuts. She got married to someone else. And about 5 years later, she called up one of her adult children, and she said, I woke up this morning and I wondered, what have I done? She said it was as if for that time she'd become someone else. And she woke up one morning and she thought, and she called her family and she said, I don't know what I've done. I don't know why I've done. She said, I've been in this fog for the last 5 years, and I woke up today and realized I threw away everything. And unfortunately, she couldn't get it back. That's kind of what Peter is. And Christians go through this temporary insanity of we just can't get where we were. And we can't be in that place where it used to make sense. And thankfully for Peter, Peter was able to come back. And I love when Jesus rose from the dead and he told Mary and the other women, remember what he said? He said, go back and tell the others and Peter that I've risen from the dead. He wanted Peter to know that as far as Jesus was concerned, he was still in the group. He was still part of the community. And that's another really good lesson for us. We all go through stages of life. We all go through seasons of life. There's metaphors we could throw out all day long about kind of the journey of life. But we all go through these journeys of where our faith is up here and nothing can shake it, and it's down here and nothing makes sense. all the more important to be that for each other. And that is, I hate to say this because I don't want you to get big heads. I don't want you to get complacent. But I mean, that's what drew me here to Word of Life, is I see this, not perfect. We're not a perfect church. I'll never sit up here and tell you we're a perfect church. Then I'm the one who's got temporary insanity. But I see a church with fewer obstacles that prevent us from enacting this. And sometimes we really do well. We really get it good. We really do well. And the key is for us to maximize those times when this community really works for each other, and find ways to minimize those times when things become a distraction. Whether it's the food on the back table, or a steeple on the building, or the plans we're going to have for this back lot. Whatever those things are, whatever the discussions are, whatever the differences are, as long as we can keep those as peripheral things, not that they're not important, but they're not the center. And we can grow from each time we have a disagreement. We can grow from that. And we can decide as a community that our disagreements are going to be disagreements within the framework of a community that is defined by the cross, not defined by our disagreements. And that's really that's up to us to do. And we have these models here that John gives us on why it's important and how to do that. So let's pray that Jesus will guide us in that. Lord God, we give you thanks this day for how Jesus interacted with these people, on how he was comfortable leaving the conversation open with Nicodemus. Never pressed Nicodemus to decide which community he was in, but was always there and open for Nicodemus. And how he welcomed back Peter, specifically pointing out that Peter was still part of the group, even after Peter had denied him. And we pray, Lord, that you would guide us in being there for each other, watching out for each other, so we don't have those who leave and find only despair. And we pray for your guidance for this in Jesus' name. Amen.